Welcome, everyone. Ready for another deep dive? This time, we're tackling Halloween.
Ooh, Halloween. Gotta love it. Costumes, candy, spooky stories. What's not to like?
Exactly. But we're going deeper than that, really peeling back the layers of this holiday. We've got some fascinating sources to dig into. We've got a travel blog, kind of a quirky news site,
Yeah, those
a
headlines.
list of fun facts,
Always love those.
and even a lifestyle blog.
Ooh la.
Yeah, fancy. But seriously, we want to find out how Halloween began, how it's changed over time.
Right, like how did we get from ancient rituals to trick-or-treating?
Exactly. And we also found some spooky real-life events that happened on Halloween. It's going to be a wild ride. So let's start at the beginning, way, way back.
Like caveman days.
Aha, not quite that far. Think ancient Ireland. The Celts had this festival called Samhain, and it was all about, well, death.
Death. That's not very festive.
No, not really. Samhain marked the end of the harvest and the start of winter, the time of year when things get colder and darker.
Makes sense, like nature's dying.
Right, so for the Celts, it was a time to reflect on death and
The what?
the veil between the worlds. They believed that on October 31st, the veil thinned and spirits could roam freely among the living.
Okay, now that's spooky.
It gets spookier. So to appease those spirits, people wore costumes and lit huge bonfires.
To scare them away.
More like to blend in, and not attract attention.
Clever.
And it wasn't just about avoiding ghostly encounters. Celtic priests used Samhain for divination. They tried to predict the future by communicating with the spirit world.
So like fortune telling.
Exactly. Trying to see what the next year had in store. Pretty intense stuff, right?
Yeah, that's way more serious than our Halloween.
Definitely. But now, fast forward a few centuries. Christianity starts to spread through Celtic lands, and they bring All Saints' Day on November 1st.
A day to honor saints.
Yep. And All Hallows' Eve, the evening before All Saints' Day, got kind of mixed up with Samhain. Over time, the name was shortened, and bam, Halloween was born.
So Halloween is like a mashup of pagan and Christian traditions.
Exactly. It's a blend of ancient beliefs and newer influences.
That's actually pretty cool. Shows how traditions can change and adapt.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And speaking of change, those jack-o'-lanterns we see everywhere, those carved pumpkins.
I love those.
Me too. But they have a really interesting history. They started as carved turnips, beets, and potatoes, used to ward off evil spirits.
Wait, really? Not pumpkins?
Nope. Pumpkins came later. The whole jack-o'-lantern thing is based on an Irish folk tale about a guy called Stingy Jack. Long story short, he tricked the devil and was cursed to wander the earth with only a burning coal inside a carved turnip to light his way.
Oh, I've heard that story. So our jack-o'-lanterns are like Stingy Jack's lantern.
Yep, but with a pumpkin upgrade. And speaking of traditions that have transformed, what about bobbing for apples? Now, it's a fun party game, but it might have roots in Roman festivals and ancient beliefs about love and marriage.
So instead of finding a worm, you were trying to find your soulmate.
Maybe. It's a bit unclear, but it definitely adds a whole new layer to the game, doesn't it?
For sure. And costumes. I've always wondered, did people dress up to scare off spirits during Samhain? Like, was that the original point of Halloween costumes?
It's a popular theory.
Yeah.
Some people believe those early costumes were meant to help people blend in with the spirits so they wouldn't be recognized or bothered. But as Halloween evolved, costumes became more about having fun and expressing yourself, becoming something different, whether it's scary, funny, or just plain weird.
Makes sense. From disguises to self-expression.
Exactly. But Halloween isn't all fun and games. Our research also uncovered some pretty dark events that happened on Halloween. It's a reminder that real life doesn't stop just because it's a holiday.
Right, like those news stories that always pop up about Halloween pranks gone wrong.
Yeah, and some events are much more serious than pranks. We found stories about accidental hangings, a murder that was predicted by the Son of Sam killer, and even the rise of fascism in Italy, which took place on October 31st, 1922.
Wow. Talk about a dark side to Halloween. The rise of fascism on Halloween, that's chilling.
It is. It just shows that even amidst the costumes and candy, the world keeps turning. And sometimes things happen that are far more frightening than any ghost story.
True. It's like seeing two sides of a coin. One side is all about fun and escape, while the other side holds these darker, more real-world events.
Exactly. And it makes you think, what's the nature of this holiday? Is it purely about having fun, or is it also about acknowledging the darker aspects of life?
Maybe it's both. Maybe it's a way to explore those darker themes, those fears we have, in a safe and controlled way.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought, like a way to confront our fears without actually having to face them directly.
Right. We dress up as monsters and ghosts, but in a way that's playful and fun. It's like we're taking control of those fears and making them our own.
I like that, taking control of our fears. And speaking of scary things, there was one story that really stuck with me. It was about a man in Delaware who was mistaken for a Halloween decoration.
What? How is that even possible?
Well, it seems he was lying in his yard, and people thought he was part of a spooky display. By the time someone realized he was actually a person in need of help, it was too late.
Oh my gosh. That's terrible. It's like something out of a horror movie.
It really blurs the lines between reality and Halloween illusion, doesn't it? It makes you think about how easily we can be tricked by appearances, especially on a night when we're expecting the unexpected.
Totally. And it makes you wonder how much we might be misinterpreting, not just on Halloween, but in everyday life. What's real and what's just a facade? What's genuine and what's just for show?
Exactly. And speaking of misinterpretations, one of Halloween's most enduring symbols is the black cat. We've all heard about the superstition, but where did it come from?
Oh, that one goes way back. Like Middle Ages way back. Black cats were associated with witches and considered bad omens. They were tied to the devil and seen as harbingers of misfortune. Basically, a PR nightmare for black cats.
Poor black cats, and sadly that superstition still affects them today, especially around Halloween.
You're right. Some animal shelters won't allow black cat adoptions around Halloween because they're worried people might adopt them for harmful or ritualistic purposes.
Seriously, are there actual cases of that happening?
Well, groups like the ASPCA argue that there's not enough evidence to support that fear. They believe that most people who adopt pets are doing it for the right reasons. They say shelters should focus on promoting black cat adoptions during Halloween to combat the negative stereotypes.
So you have these two opposing viewpoints. Shelters trying to protect black cats from potential harm, and the ASPCA encouraging responsible adoptions year-round.
Yeah, it's a tough one. On one hand, you want to protect the animals, but on the other hand, you don't want to discriminate against loving families who just want to give a black cat a good home.
It's a reminder that even seemingly harmless traditions can have unintended consequences. We need to think critically about our actions and make sure we're not perpetuating harmful beliefs, even if they're rooted in tradition.
Yeah, it really makes you stop and think, really examine things more closely.
Totally. And you know what else is interesting? How people act differently on Halloween night. Like something about the costumes and the atmosphere just changes behavior. Have you noticed that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's like everyone's a little more uninhibited, a little more willing to let loose.
Right. Like it's almost expected to be a little mischievous on Halloween.
Exactly. Psychologists call it de-individuation. It's basically the idea that when we're in groups or wearing masks, we feel more anonymous and less accountable for our actions.
Hmm. So like when you're in a big crowd and you might do something you wouldn't normally do if you were by yourself.
Exactly. You feel less inhibited, more likely to go along with the group, even if it means bending the rules a bit. Like, think about those big Halloween parties where everyone's in costume. People really get into character, and sometimes that leads to some interesting behavior.
Yeah. And it's not just a feeling. There's actually research to back this up. One study found that costumed children in groups were more likely to steal candy and money than kids who weren't in costume or weren't part of a group.
It's like the costumes give them a sense of anonymity, a separation from their everyday identities, so they feel less inhibited, less like themselves.
That's wild. So it's not just about being sneaky. It's like the costumes actually change their behavior.
Right. Another study found that masked children were more likely to take more candy than they were allowed when they thought no adults were watching.
So the masks kind of gave them a sense of invisibility or like a free pass to break the rules.
Exactly. The masks create a sense of anonymity, and that can lead to a disconnect between their actions and their sense of responsibility.
Wow, that's fascinating. So Halloween costumes really can have a psychological effect, especially on kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's not just kids. Adults get into the Halloween spirit too.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, look at all the adult Halloween parties and events. These days, grown-ups are dressing up and having just as much fun as the kids.
Exactly. And I think the same psychological principles apply. Halloween is a time when social norms are relaxed, inhibitions are lowered. We're surrounded by spooky decorations. Everyone's in costumery. There's a sense of excitement and anticipation in the air.
It's like a different reality for a night.
Right. It creates a unique social context where we might feel more free to express ourselves in ways we normally wouldn't.
So it's like Halloween gives us permission to try on different personas to see how it feels.
Exactly. It's a chance to tap into our imaginations and explore different sides of ourselves.
That's what makes it so cool, I think. It's not just about candy and costumes. It's about exploring different parts of who we are.
Absolutely. It's about pushing boundaries, playing with our identities, and having some fun while we're at it.
Okay, so we've journeyed from ancient Celtic rituals to the psychology of masks and costumes. It's amazing how much history and cultural significance is packed into this one holiday.
And we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to discover about Halloween's traditions, symbols, and impact on our culture.
One thing that really stands out to me is the enduring appeal of Halloween. Despite its evolving nature and the darker elements we've uncovered, it remains a beloved holiday for people of all ages.
It's true. There's something about Halloween that captures our imaginations, whether it's the thrill of a good scare, the nostalgia of childhood memories, or simply the joy of dressing up and letting loose.
And it's interesting to think about the contrast between Halloween's origins, facing mortality, acknowledging darkness, and its modern celebration, which often focuses on fun, candy, and costumes.
It's almost like we're using the costumes and festivities to distract ourselves from the original intent of the holiday. Would you agree?
Hmm. That's a really thought-provoking idea. Are we celebrating Halloween to confront our fears or to escape them?
Perhaps it's a bit of both. Maybe Halloween provides a safe space to explore those darker themes, to play with the idea of death and the supernatural without actually having to confront them directly.
It's like a cultural pressure valve, allowing us to release some of that pent-up anxiety and fear in a controlled and socially acceptable way.
Precisely. And that, I think, is part of the reason why Halloween continues to resonate with us. It allows us to tap into something primal, to acknowledge those universal fears and anxieties in a way that's both entertaining and cathartic.
Yeah, it's like a collective exhale, a chance to laugh at the things that scare us and to celebrate the fleeting nature of life itself.
Beautifully put. And that brings us to a final, perhaps even more profound question. If Halloween is ultimately about acknowledging our mortality, how does its modern celebration reflect or distract from that original intent?
Whoa, that's deep. It's almost like Halloween is daring us to look deeper, to think beyond the costumes and candy, and confront the bigger questions about life and death.
Exactly. It's an invitation to contemplate those mysteries, to embrace the unknown, and to find meaning in both the light and the darkness. And that, I think, is the true magic of Halloween.
Wow, we've covered so much ground tonight. It's amazing to think how this holiday has evolved from ancient rituals to modern-day celebrations.
It really is a testament to human creativity and our fascination with the unknown,
Mm.
how we keep finding new ways to express those primal fears and desires.
Yeah, and it's not just about fear. It's about community, about coming together to celebrate and share stories and traditions.
Absolutely. It's about connecting with something bigger than ourselves, tapping into that collective imagination.
And after all this research, I have a whole new appreciation for Halloween. It's not just about candy and costumes anymore.
Right. It's about acknowledging the cycle of life and death, about facing our fears and finding joy in the midst of darkness.
And it's about letting go, having fun, and embracing the weird and wonderful.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So as you head out to those Halloween parties, carve those pumpkins, and maybe even get spooked by a black cat,
Mm.
remember the layers of history and meaning behind it all.
Yeah, happy Halloween, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
And remember, keep exploring their shadows.